The day my parents were arrested, I was sitting in the front row of the courtroom with my hands folded in my lap, not because I was afraid, not because I was begging anyone to believe me, but because, for the first time in my life, I had nothing left to prove. My mother stood at the witness stand in her pearl earrings and navy dress, the same one she wore to church every Easter. My father sat behind her, stiff-backed, jaw clenched, pretending he was still the man everyone in town respected. They had spent months calling me a liar, a thief, a disgrace. And worst of all, they had done it under oath. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue as the prosecutor asked her one final question. "Mrs. Bennett, are you certain your daughter admitted to taking the money?" She nodded slowly. "Yes," she whispered. "She told us she did it." I looked at her, waiting for the guilt to show on her face. It didn't. Then my attorney stood up. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't shout. He simply walked to the evidence table, picked up a small flash drive, and said, "Your Honor, the defense would like to submit newly authenticated audio evidence." My mother froze. My father's face turned gray. And in that moment, I knew. They remembered. They remembered the night they sat in my kitchen and begged me to stay quiet. They remembered my brother's voice in the background. They remembered exactly what they had said. The courtroom went silent as the recording began to play. My mother's voice filled the room. "If you love this family, you'll take the blame." And that was when everything changed. But to understand why my own parents stood in court and lied against me, you have to understand what kind of daughter I had been before they destroyed me. And looking back, I should have seen the signs much sooner. I grew up in a small town in Ohio where everyone knew everyone, and family reputation mattered more than the truth. My name is Claire Bennett, and for most of my life, I believed being a good daughter meant being useful. My parents owned a small catering business called Bennett Family Events. My father handled contracts. My mother handled clients. My older brother, Ryan, handled excuses, and I handled everything else. By the time I was 12, I was folding napkins after school. At 15, I was loading trays into vans. At 17, I knew how to balance invoices better than most adults. Ryan was 4 years older than me, charming in the way spoiled people often are. He could smile his way out of anything. A broken window, a failed class, a missing deposit. My mother always said, "Ryan just needs time to mature." When I made one mistake, she said, "Claire, you know better." That sentence followed me like a shadow. I wanted to become a lawyer. Maybe because I grew up watching unfairness happen right in front of me, and nobody ever called it by its name. I loved rules, not because I was strict, but because rules meant people couldn't just rewrite reality whenever it suited them. At night, after catering events, I would sit at the kitchen table with my school books open, smelling like frosting and dish soap, trying to finish homework while my brother went out with friends. "You work too hard," my father once said. I smiled because I thought it was praise. Then he added, "That's good. This family needs someone dependable." Dependable. That was what they called me when they meant invisible. When I got accepted into a state university with a partial scholarship, I cried in the school parking lot. I called my mother first. "Mom, I got in." There was a pause. "That's wonderful, honey," she said. Then immediately, "But you'll still help on weekends, right?" I told her yes. Of course I did. Because back then, I still believed love was something you earned by being needed. During college, I came home every weekend. I missed parties. I missed study groups. I missed dates. I worked weddings, funerals, church banquets, retirement dinners. I told myself it was temporary. One day, I would pass the bar. One day, I would build a life where nobody could make me feel small. My grandmother was the only person who saw what was happening. "You give too much to people who only know how to take," she told me once while we washed dishes after Thanksgiving. I laughed it off. "They're my family." She looked at me sadly. "Family can still use you, sweetheart." I wish I had listened, but I didn't, because I still believed if I worked hard enough, sacrificed enough, forgave enough, they would finally see me. But I was wrong. And the first betrayal came on a rainy Thursday afternoon, when I discovered my college savings account was empty. I found out by accident. I was 22, in my final year of college, standing inside the bank with a folder full of tuition paperwork. I had saved for years, birthday money, catering tips, part-time wages. Every dollar I could spare went into that account. The teller looked at her screen, then back at me. "I'm sorry, Miss Bennett. The account balance is $12.46. I laughed because I thought she was joking. "No, that can't be right." She turned the monitor slightly. There it was. Withdrawals, transfers, cashier's checks, all signed under my father's authorization because the account had been opened when I was a minor. I drove home in the rain, with my hands shaking on the steering wheel. My mother was in the kitchen arranging flowers for an event. My father sat at the table reviewing contracts. Ryan was on the couch, watching television like he owned the world. "Where's my money?" I asked. My mother didn't even look surprised. My father sighed. "Claire, calm down." That was the first sign. Looking back, I should have known. Innocent people ask what happened. Guilty people ask you to calm down. "Where is my tuition money?" Ryan muted the TV. My mother finally turned around. "Your brother needed help." "With what?" No one answered. "With what?" I repeated. Ryan rolled his eyes. "Don't be dramatic." My father stood. "Ryan made a mistake. He got involved in some online investments, and there were debts. My college savings paid his debts?" "You had a scholarship," my mother said, as if that explained everything. "A partial scholarship. Partial." "You're smart," my father said. "You'll figure it out." I stared at them. I waited for shame. An apology. Anything. Instead, my mother said, "Ryan was in real trouble. We had to protect him." "And me?" I asked. My voice cracked, and I hated that it did. My father looked away. My mother's expression hardened. "You're stronger than he is." That sentence broke something inside me. Because what she meant was, Ryan deserved rescue because he was weak, and I deserved abandonment because I had survived everything else. I had to take out emergency loans. I worked nights at a diner. I stopped sleeping more than 4 hours. I ate instant noodles so often that the smell still makes me nauseous. Ryan never paid back a cent. My parents never brought it up again. When I graduated, they attended the ceremony and smiled for photos. My mother posted one online with the caption, "So proud of our hardworking daughter." I remember staring at that post in my tiny apartment, laughing until I cried. Because people applauded them. What wonderful parents. You must be so proud. They raised her right. No one knew they had almost made me drop out. But that still wasn't the worst thing. 3 years later, after I had rebuilt my life piece by piece, Ryan made a mistake so big that my parents needed someone to bury under it. And this time, they chose me. After college, I didn't become a lawyer right away. Debt has a way of delaying dreams. I worked as an office manager for a real estate company, studied at night, and saved slowly. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Then my grandmother died. She left me her small house on Maple Street. It wasn't fancy. The porch sagged, the kitchen cabinets stuck, the roof needed work. But when I unlocked the door for the first time, I cried. Because it was the first place in my life where nobody could tell me I didn't belong. My parents hated that house. Not openly at first. My mother said, "It's too much responsibility for a girl alone." My father said, "You should let us manage it until you're settled." Ryan said, "Grandma always liked you best." I ignored them. For once, I chose myself. I fixed the house slowly. Painted walls, repaired floors, planted lavender by the porch. I built a quiet life. Then one morning, 2 police officers knocked on my door. "Claire Bennett?" "Yes. We need to ask you some questions about funds missing from Bennett family events." My stomach dropped. I hadn't worked for my parents in years, except occasionally helping with paperwork when my mother begged me. A month earlier, she had asked me to review some vendor invoices because Ryan was overwhelmed. I should have said no. But family guilt is a leash that tightens even after you think you've escaped. The officers told me nearly $86,000 had been transferred from the business account into an outside account, an account opened under my name. I couldn't breathe. That's impossible. They showed me documents with my signature, only it wasn't my signature. It was close enough to fool someone who didn't know me. But I knew exactly who had practiced copying it as a joke when we were teenagers. Ryan. When I confronted my parents, my father wouldn't meet my eyes. Claire, just cooperate. Cooperate? Ryan stole from you and framed me. My mother slapped the table. Do not accuse your brother. He used my name. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Ryan walked in then, calm as ever. Maybe you forgot what you signed. I stared at him. You forged my name. He smiled slightly. Not enough for anyone else to notice. Just enough for me. My mother stepped between us. Claire, if this goes public, the business is finished. Your father could lose everything. I didn't do anything. My father finally spoke. Sometimes innocent people still make sacrifices for their family. That was the moment I realized they weren't confused. They weren't manipulated. They knew. They knew Ryan had done it, and they had already decided I was the cost of saving him. The case moved fast, too fast. The local prosecutor believed the paperwork. The bank records were messy. My name was everywhere because I had once helped with bookkeeping. Ryan played the helpless son. My parents played devastated victims. Then came the preliminary hearing. My mother took the stand and said I had confessed privately. My father confirmed it. I remember sitting there while they lied, feeling like my body had turned to ice. My attorney leaned close and whispered, "Don't react." Don't react? My own mother had just buried me alive, with a soft voice and a tissue in her hand. After that hearing, everything collapsed. My employer put me on leave. Neighbors stopped waving. Someone spray-painted thief on my garage door. I lost freelance work. I sold my car. I nearly lost Grandma's house, trying to pay legal fees. At night, I sat on the kitchen floor with bills spread around me, wondering how the people who raised me could look at me in court and lie without blinking. I wished everything had ended there, but I had no idea the worst humiliation was still coming. 2 weeks before trial, my parents came to my house, not to apologize, to ask me to plead guilty. They arrived just after sunset. My mother held a casserole dish, as if baked chicken could soften betrayal. My father stood behind her, hands in his pockets. "Can we come in?" she asked. I should have said no, but some broken part of me still wanted parents. They sat at my kitchen table, the same table Grandma had left me. My mother pushed the casserole toward me. "You're too thin," she said. I almost laughed. My father cleared his throat. "The plea deal is reasonable." I stared at him. "You came here to convince me to confess to a crime Ryan committed." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "You don't understand what prison would do to him. And what would it do to me?" Silence. That silence told me everything. Then my mother said the words that later saved my life. "If you love this family, you'll take the blame." What she didn't know was that my old laptop was open on the counter, recording audio for a legal consultation. I had been preparing notes for my attorney before they arrived. I didn't plan it. I didn't trick them. For once, the truth simply stayed in the room long enough to be captured. Ryan called during that conversation. My father put him on speaker by mistake. Ryan's voice came through clearly. "Did she agree yet?" My mother snapped. "Not yet." Ryan cursed. Then he said, "Tell her if she doesn't. I'll say she asked me to move the money." I looked at my parents. They looked at the phone. Nobody spoke. That was the beginning of my comeback. Not a dramatic one. Not overnight. I still cried. I still panicked. I still woke up shaking. But the next morning, I sent the recording to my attorney. For the first time in months, he smiled. "Claire," he said, "this changes everything." But we had to be careful. The audio needed authentication. We needed bank traces. We needed proof that Ryan controlled the outside account. So I worked. I worked harder than I had ever worked. I found old emails, downloaded invoices, compared signatures, rebuilt timelines. I contacted vendors who remembered Ryan requesting strange payment changes. One woman, a florist named Denise, told me, "Honey, I always thought something was off. Ryan told me not to email you anymore." Piece by piece, the lie began to crack. And during those months, something changed in me too. I stopped asking why my parents didn't love me enough. I started asking why I had loved myself so little that I kept returning to people who hurt me. That question hurt more than anything, but it also freed me. By the time the trial began, I was no longer the daughter begging to be believed. I was a woman carrying evidence. And my parents had no idea. The trial lasted 3 days before everything exploded. On the first day, the prosecutor painted me as the bitter daughter who had stolen from her family business. On the second day, my parents testified. My mother cried beautifully. My father sounded wounded. Ryan sat behind them in a suit, looking at me like he had already won. But on the third day, my attorney stood up with the flash drive. The recording played. "If you love this family, you'll take the blame." Then Ryan's voice. "Did she agree yet?" Then his threat. "I'll say she asked me to move the money." The courtroom changed after that. You could feel it. People shifted in their seats. The prosecutor stopped writing. My mother's tissue trembled in her hand. But that was only the first twist. The second came from the bank. My attorney called a digital forensics expert who had traced the outside account. The login records showed access from Ryan's personal laptop, then from my parents' home Wi-Fi, then from my father's office computer. The expert also showed that my so-called signature had been created from a scanned copy of an old catering contract I had signed years earlier. My father closed his eyes. Ryan's confident smile disappeared. Then came the final blow. A former employee named Marcus testified that Ryan had bragged about moving money before the investigation began. He said Claire was the perfect person to blame, Marcus told the court. He said she was too responsible, so everyone would believe she had access. My chest tightened, not because I was surprised, but because hearing the truth spoken out loud felt like being pulled from underwater. The prosecutor requested a recess. When court resumed, everything was different. The charges against me were dismissed pending formal review. Ryan was taken into custody for fraud and forgery. But then the judge looked at my parents. Their attorney stood quickly, whispering something urgent. It didn't matter, because they had lied under oath. They had testified that I confessed. They had supported forged evidence. They had tried to send their own daughter to prison to protect their son. The judge's voice was calm but cold. "Mrs. Bennett, Mr. Bennett, you are being remanded, pending investigation for perjury and obstruction." My mother gasped. My father stood halfway, then sat back down like his legs had failed. And for the first time in my entire life, my parents looked at me not with disappointment, not with blame, but with fear. Outside the courtroom, my mother tried to reach me before the officers led her away. "Claire," she cried, "please, tell them we were scared." I looked at her. For years, I had dreamed of that moment. I thought I would scream. I thought I would ask her why. But when it came, I felt strangely calm. "You weren't scared when you lied," I said. "You were only scared when it stopped working." Her face crumpled. My father wouldn't look at me. Ryan did. He glared like this was somehow still my fault. "You ruined us," he said. I almost smiled. "No, Ryan. I just stopped protecting you from yourself." The consequences came slowly, but they came. Ryan pleaded guilty to multiple charges. My parents avoided long prison sentences, but their reputation was destroyed. Bennett family events collapsed within 6 months. People who had once praised them started whispering. Church friends stopped inviting my mother to luncheons. My father sold the building to pay legal debts, and the town that had painted me as a thief now wanted to apologize. Some did. Most didn't. That was another lesson. People love being wrong quietly. My employer offered me my job back. I declined. Instead, with the settlement from the civil case and what remained of my savings, I finally applied to law school. I was older than most students, more tired, less trusting. But I understood justice in a way textbooks could never teach. On the day I received my acceptance letter, I sat on Grandma's porch, the lavender blooming beside the steps. For a moment, I imagined calling my mother. Then I put the phone down. Some victories are too sacred to share with people who prayed for your downfall. I used to think family meant loyalty no matter what. Now I know real family does not ask you to destroy yourself to protect someone else's lies. Betrayal changes you. It makes you quieter, sharper, more careful with your heart. But it can also wake you up. My parents taught me what love was not. My brother taught me what entitlement becomes when nobody ever says no. And that courtroom taught me that truth may arrive late, but when it finally enters the room, it does not whisper. It echoes. I lost money. I lost trust. I lost the family I thought I had. But I gained something stronger. Myself. And this time, no one can take that from me. If you were in Claire's place, could you forgive parents who lied under oath to protect the child they always favored? Tell me honestly in the comments, because stories like this are painful for a reason. They remind us how deep family betrayal can cut, especially when the people who should protect us become the ones we need protection from. And if you have ever been blamed, silenced, or sacrificed for someone else's mistakes, share your thoughts below. Someone reading your comment may need to know they are not alone. If this story moved you, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. We bring you emotional stories about injustice, betrayal, hidden family secrets, and the moments when the truth finally changes everything. And make sure you come back for the next story, because sometimes the people everyone underestimates are the ones who survive, rebuild, and walk away stronger than anyone expected.